Welcome to another episode of Real Talk on Renal Cancer, sponsored by the Judy Nicholson Foundation. I'm so excited to have today with me Joel Stern, a dear friend of mine and of the Judy Nicholson Kidney Cancer Foundations. Joel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Laura, and it's a privilege to be here. And thank you, Judy Nicholson, for doing all the great work that they do.
Yes, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So, Joel, I know that you are likely very familiar to our listeners, but if you don't mind, for those who may not be familiar with you and your story, just sharing a little bit about your kidney cancer diagnosis and how you found yourself on this crazy journey that we call a cancer diagnosis.
No, I'm happy to, and obviously divert any direction you want to, so we can hopefully get folks excited about the conversation. So I've always had a bad back, and I'm a very competitive person, and I love playing tennis. And my left side and back were hurting a lot. And I went to a chiropractor for a few months, and nothing had helped. And he didn't order any X-rays, which in hindsight was a mistake. So finally, I went to an orthopedic surgeon who immediately did an MRI, and I get a phone call 3 days later. And he said, "You have a 9-centimeter tumor on your iliac bone, suspicious for metastatic cancer." I was in complete shock. My wife and daughter were in the house at the time, and I think I started crying, to be candid with you. It's just not the way. I don't know this doctor very well. It's not the way to deliver that type of message. But long story short, in a week period or less, I was scanned from foot to head, lots of blood tests, and it was determined that I had this little 4-centimeter tumor in my kidney that was causing no harm to the kidney. But it had spread up and down my back from the base of the skull down to my hip, including the iliac bone. And it was later through pathology of the iliac bone defined as clear cell, stage 3. And that was the original diagnosis, November 16th, 2020, the day we will never forget.
Yeah, I morbidly call it mine my cancerversary, just to try to take some power back, if you will, over a day that, to your point, is really devastating for so many. Your story is so common, unfortunately, right? You know, a kind of random ache or pain here. Mine I manifests itself in an ER visit because of pain in my lower back. And I think one thing that I know you and I have talked about before, but would love for you to maybe share a little bit, is you said that you were very emotional whenever you got the news. And so how did you process that? To your point, this is a doctor that you're not familiar with, you don't see every day, you get a call out of the blue. How did you handle that initially?
I'm not very proud of myself because I take pride in being an excellent caregiver and being very rational in my thought, but I lost all logic, right? I mean, the stages of cancer are real, and they're not always sequential, but they bleed into each other. So immediate shock, then angry. And I never said, why me? Because that suggests it should be somebody else, but it's, oh gosh, why me? And then I had sadness. And then I think that moved into depression a little bit. And to be candid, I did not process it very well. And I didn't think I'd make it till Christmas. I sat on the couch. I was in terrible pain at the time. We started Opdivo and Yervoy, but the hip was really bothering me. So we ultimately did radiation to the hip, and that helped a lot. But I'd say from November 16th to the end of February, I wallowed in self-pity and could not think logically and did not process it at all. And then one day I woke up and I said, this is just ridiculous. My pain level I can manage it. I haven't died yet. I made it through Christmas. And I just went into that, I'm going to beat the you-know-what out of this disease. And for most of the time since that early period, I've been in that mode of operation. It took a long time. I'm mad at myself because it took a lot longer than I thought. But I also didn't have other organizations like Judy Nicholson, Kidney Cancer Foundation. I didn't have Immerman's Angels at the time, which I'm now a mentor of. But I didn't have any support to help except for my family, which was incredible. But they didn't know what to do with me because they've never, ever seen me not in control. It wouldn't surprise you that I'm self-anointed patriarch of the family. So when the patriarch's not doing well, people like are in shock and they didn't know what to do. And I had to get through that myself. And it was really tough. And all the things that I've learned since then, I try to teach others so they don't make the same mistakes that I made.
Yeah, no. First of all, I know I'm preaching the choir. You shouldn't beat yourself up for that initial response because I did the same thing. I feel like that month in between my diagnosis and surgery are just a blur. And part of that's because I was in a lot of pain. And so it was on and painkillers and all. But like you, I was always the one in the family who kept everything running. And then it was like, oh man, mom has to take a step back and take care of herself. And which is really hard for someone who's naturally a go-getter, a caregiver to do. Joel, you mentioned whenever you were sharing that at the time and then in the beginning, you didn't have those initial support mechanisms like Judy Nicholson Foundation and Emmerman's Angels and all. And so I know that you're a big proponent of community building and having that organic support for patients and caregivers. Can you just share a little bit about why you were drawn to that part of advocacy and why you think it's so important for patients and caregivers to have that level of support?
No, it's a great question. What I learned is you never stop learning, no matter what your age. And I learned this at 60, I think, too. No matter how supportive your family is, they can't really understand what you're going through. So my family was amazing and they continue to be amazing. And I don't think I'd be here without them, but I needed more. And into the journey, I found stage 4 renal cell community that I joined, which was very helpful. I ultimately started my own that I'm proud to say is now over 3,100 people, all stage 4 renal cell patients and caregivers. But it was that community that has and continues to be the most important thing for me to help me navigate myself through the choppy waters. I also became very educated on the practice of renal cell carcinoma, the treatments, the options, how best to advocate for yourself, making sure that you're not inhibited from getting second and or third opinions. So I learned a lot in a very short period of time from that February, March period on. But I will tell you that the community for me is the most important thing that helps me with it. And it's my legacy, other than my 3 adorable grandsons. It's to help bring that forward and help others not fall into the same trap that I have fallen into. And as you know, I also wrote a book finally about my journey. It was a compilation of my Friday posts that I wrote that really people said, oh, how great it was for them. And I said, look, I'm being selfish. I'm writing it for me. It's helping me get through it. Plus, I want to leave a gift for my grandsons, but I'm happy to see that book still helps other people because it's a real life week to week journey line of going through it and learning to have a sense of humor, learning not to give up, learning that it's a marathon, not a sprint, learning all the lessons that I think you and I both have and we teach others, we pay it forward.
Oh, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about your book and what kind of led you to your point. I know you were doing these Friday posts and the community support groups, but what made you decide to bite the bullet and go ahead and publish a book? Because that's a big decision to be a published author.
I think my wife and my daughters and the Facebook community, they said, you put all this together, it's really helpful to us. Why don't you put it in a book? And I debated whether I self-publish or publish. And I said, no, I'm going to do it my own way. Pictures of my family sputtered throughout the book. And it's fun. And it continues. Even 2 years later, it's selling 30 to 40 books a month, which is, and every dollar goes to either the Judy Nicholson Foundation or the Kidney Cancer Association. So I don't make a penny on it, but it was cathartic for me to write. I still even read it. It's not the kind of book you read chapter to chapter. You read a couple chapters a night. Hopefully you'll laugh, cry. Dr. Campbell at MD Anderson said to me, he said, I know it's a good book because I both laughed and cried as I read through it, which really was what I wanted people to experience because it's the whole litany of different emotions, often just circulating within your body, uncontrolled at the same time. But that's my gift. When I do die, and hopefully it's not for a long time, that book will be my legacy to my grandkids and to understand that ultimately I figured out how to do it right.
I love that. I love that you talk about the humor too, because I don't think that we talk about the humor aspect enough. And for understandable reasons, people want to be sensitive and appropriate and all, but from my perspective, you have to have humor to get through some of this. I don't think I've ever shared this on the podcast before, but whenever I was diagnosed, I had decided to write a blog because most of my family wasn't nearby. And so I wanted a way to keep people updated. And also that's my therapy, was writing and just sharing my feelings and thoughts. And so my daughter said to me one night, she's, Mom, are you going to join Match.com? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she goes, to find another kidney. You need to go find another kidney on Match.com. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. That's how I came up with my blog name, was Single White Kidney, because I just thought it was, if you can't laugh about it, you're going to cry. And we do enough crying about it as it is. So, how do you feel like humor really helped you through your diagnosis, Joel?
My humor often is self-deprecating because I find making fun of myself usually doesn't offend anybody else except for me, and I'm too stupid to be offended by it. It gets you through it. The nurse is trying to take blood and she misses the vein. You can be angry at him or her, but I choose to make fun of it. My veins aren't working right or whatever. And then I did whatever it's called, artificial intelligence picture of me as a doctor, because I'm always very careful in these communities to say, I am not a doctor, nor I went on TV, but
Right.
it was invented for a reason, or at least it was ingrained in our culture and the way we operate for a reason. It's to help us get through tough times. And if you can make people smile while you're going through hell, that's an interesting challenge. And I like challenges. So humor is a big part of it. Transparency. My life, as you know, and similar to yours, is really an open book. So I've let people inside. They know how I feel. They know when I'm emotionally down. They know when I'm emotionally up. So I have really no skeletons in my closet, which for most of my life I did. So transparency was another attribute that I learned to really enjoy. And I sleep much better. I really don't sleep well at night, but I feel better at night going to bed knowing that I've been transparent. Being an optimist, but not a Pollyanna, I think is really important. It's not woe is me, the end is near. It's the glass is half full. Let's figure out how to fight and win the next round and get the next treatment out there. So I think optimism is incredibly important. Honesty, being open, these are just all emotions that I probably had, but I didn't share as much with the outside world. And that's another kind of benefit of the book. You really see the real me, the good, the bad, and the ugly in my journey with renal cell carcinoma.
I think that's so important because, yeah, I was recently talking with a patient and they were sharing with me how they felt like they lost hope, which is something that we commonly experience. I think everyone with a cancer diagnosis and faces that at some point. But for me, what keeps me going is the community and seeing our fellow patients and survivors, but also just the incredible research that's happening in the field. And I know that you have a bird's eye view on that too. You stay up to date on what's happening and the latest treatments and so on and so forth. And I know that you're, of course, a fellow board member of the Judy Nicholson Kidney Cancer Foundation and involved with Kidney Cancer Association as well. So what changes or improvements that you've seen over the last few years that really get you excited about the latest in patient and care and research?
First of all, these doctors that are researching and trying to make stage 4 a chronic disease rather than a terminal disease. I use the term durable remission. I don't care what you call it. If I'm going to live for 25, 30 years with this disease, you can call it anything you want, but I love the
Right.
term durable remission. We've seen so much. The advent of therapy, Opdivo and Yervoy, Keytruda has been incredible, specifically for me as well, Opdivo and Yervoy in my case. The additional TKIs that are out there, like Cabometyx is a tough drug, but it works really well. Belzutifan just recently got approved. The trials in CAR T cell are fascinating to me, and they now have an off-the-shelf CAR T cell trial going on where you get the blood from somebody else and they put it in you and take it and then build up your T cells. The biggest challenge we have with this disease is, why does one treatment work for one person and doesn't work for another when it's an apples to apples comparison? I mean, it's easy to understand when somebody has sarcomatoid features and doesn't react the same way to Keytruda as maybe somebody without. But why in my case, clear cell, grade 3, stage 4. Why does Opdivo Yervoy work so well for me? Why have I been able to avoid the less manageable side effects like colitis or pericarditis or some of the other things that force you to stop the treatment? So there's a lot of research going on there. Biomarkers is a big area. How do we figure out that somebody has kidney cancer in advance, and how do we use that to figure out how best to treat patients, both blood and urine? There was a phase 1 vaccine. People are getting way too excited about it, but it's very early on in the process. But it was a vaccine done, I think, in combination with surgery. It had some great results, but that was phase 1, 9 patients. And we're not sure if that's because of the surgery or because of the treatment. But that's really exciting to suggest that there'd be specifically a renal cell carcinoma vaccine. But to see these doctors with their families spending 80, 90, 100 hours a week trying to find cures and better treatments for us is fascinating. I also am a consumer reviewer for the Department of Defense. For some reason, it's under that wing, reviewing research and listening to these researchers and doctors talk about what they're trying to accomplish in the renal cell carcinoma space is absolutely incredible. So the big question that you should ask, and I'm sure you're about to, is, what's the next big thing? I told you it was belzutifan a couple of years ago. And I forgot the name of it, but it's another type of belzutifan drug. I think it's HIF2A type of blocker that's out there that I think has a chance to be approved in the near future. But I will tell you, the combos, the triples, all these treatment options we have, and kudos to KC Cure for having an incredible document that keeps all of us updated on a list of all the lines of treatments in the United States, which is relevant for other people. But I'm excited, but I also know that I wouldn't be here today but for the research that James Allison did years ago with Yervoy, the first immunotherapy, and the pharmaceutical companies spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get Yervoy and then Opdivo and then Keytruda into production, because immunotherapy is absolutely fascinating in what it does, because historically we were given chemotherapy. Chemotherapy doesn't work well for renal cell carcinoma. But for years that was the treatment, and people were dying way too early. And with immunotherapy and TKIs and the combinations, we have a good chance of achieving durable remission.
Yeah. I completely agree, Joel. And that for me is what motivates me to keep going, because I can see May will be 9 years for me since my diagnosis. And
Please.
thank you. And which is miraculous in itself in many ways, because I was diagnosed stage 4 out the gate. But I see all this research. The field has changed so much just in the 9 years since I was diagnosed. And that's what whenever I talk with patients and their families, I try to reiterate is, I know that it seems overwhelming in that there are a lot of options, but actually there's a lot of options. And especially compared to whenever I was diagnosed. And like you, I do some volunteer work for different grant review boards, and including the Department of Defense is one. And I've had the great fortune to be able to sit in on panel presentations from some of the previous DoD awardees who have completed their research and are now able to report out on what they did with the funding. And it's incredible, the work that they're doing. It really is phenomenal, and it's going to change lives. But I think what motivates me the most, like you, is seeing the dedication that these doctors have, that many of them don't have a personal connection to kidney cancer and will never be personally touched by it, but they devote their lives to finding cures and all. So that keeps me going too. So thank you for that great reminder, because I do think it's easy to get caught up in thinking it's just a job for them, but in my experience, it's so much more than a job for them.
You reminded me a couple of things. One, you are truly amazing. So thank you. You inspire all of us, and what you're doing even here today, it just will go a long way towards helping families understand that it's not a death sentence having stage 4 or even having renal cell carcinoma. Number 2, all the different things you're doing in the kidney cancer space, always with a smile, and that goes the humor, are such a positive force. It's amazing that you and Katie Coleman and Sid Hamler and some others that are, first of all, way too young to get renal cell carcinoma stage 4, but are such amazing advocates. And the more we advocate, the more we give patients comfort that I didn't have. There was a patient that joined our community that was absolutely in panic, total panic, the world was going to end. And today she's an active member on our community, giving back, taking things casually, has a game plan in place, and she's become one of us. And I'm sure she's going to do more in the future. So it's fun to see. Now, look, in my community of 3,100 people do die of this disease, but you put 3,100, any group of cancer patients together or heart patients together, there's going to be death, and death hurts. I never get over it, but the amount of life in our community is 20, 30, 40, 50x
Right.
the death that we see. And we got to remind ourselves that part of life is death. And that's a hard part in dealing with our community when we see people who are close friends. Lori Markland, I have her mug, who passed away way too young. It hurts, and it makes you want to, like, is this worth it? Hurtful or helpful? And my view is it's so much more helpful. And I fight in Lori's honor. I fight all the people who have died with this disease. And I could name dozens of people that I consider friends. Every time they die, I just recommit myself to fight in their honor. And I know you do the same.
You have to. It's so hard. And I've definitely had my moments over the years, and I'm sure you have as well. You just said it, where you take a step back and go, is this worth it? Or just, I've had to take a step back from time to time because it got too emotionally hard for me, because I would get connected with a patient and then just be absolutely devastated whenever they pass. But I try to remind myself, I always say the phrase that I came up with, or I probably heard it from somewhere, to be fair, but I've adopted it as my own, which is I carry them with me. And I think I've shared with you before, and I've shared here, that my mom passed away from complications from kidney cancer and B-cell lymphoma and about 5 years ago. And I always think that she wouldn't want me to just stop doing what I'm doing because I'm upset that I lost her, right? And I think the same for our friends that we've lost, unfortunately. It's, if we don't carry them in their honor, then what happens? I wouldn't want to be forgotten.
No, and I'll tell you an interesting story about that. My mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer when I was 5 years old, and later read her medical records. They all gave her 6 months. She was one of the first patients in Cleveland, Ohio, where they did a combination of surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. It just wasn't done back then. He lived 15 years, and I was 20 rather than 5, and about that difference, right?
Yeah.
And when I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, I know it sounds crazy, but that was no big deal, right? Go in there, get it out. I'm cured 5 years later. That was the gift my father gave me. My mother was a BRCA1 carrier. I'm a BRCA1 carrier. But what I didn't appreciate, and this is what got me off that couch after 2 or 3 months, she was teaching me every day about fight, about commitment, about will to live, about putting others above herself, about not caring how she looks without her wig on. She fought for 15 years, and prior to the last year, it was a quality life, but she had surgery or radiation or chemo every other year during those periods of time. But I find myself understanding and remembering all the things she taught me that I forgot or didn't know I was learning. Talk about a gift that she left me. And I just hope to God that I can leave the same gift to my kids and grandchildren and to others, right? There's no better gift than letting people learn from yourself and decide to use the good things to help them move forward. So like your mom, she's my hero, and I fight in her honor every single day.
Wow. I didn't know that about your mom, Joel, but thank you for sharing that. And that, to your point, how incredible that she had another 15 years after that diagnosis. That's really remarkable, especially during that time. I know that it's never enough time with your mom, but you definitely are making her proud, and her legacy is living on with you. And I'd like to think that's what we're doing with our work with JNF and KCA and other organizations, is leaving lots of little bits and pieces of us sprinkled along the way for others to follow behind. That's my goal, at least.
And helping newly diagnosed stage 4 patients and caregivers know that it's not the end.
Right.
It really is a marathon, not a sprint. You've heard me
Yeah.
say that. There's twists and turns and curves. It's a whole set of challenges I wish nobody had, but people are living 5, 10, 15, 20 more years with this disease, and those numbers will continue to improve as these drugs currently get tested long term and new drugs are developed. It's hard, and they have to go through the cycles of grief and sadness and depression and anger, whatever. But we've got to remind them they have life to live. In the last 4 years, I've probably lived more life than in the prior 60. It's incredible. I've done more things. I've enjoy every day. I look outside and it's cloudy, but I still say it's a pretty day outside.
Right.
I'm still playing tennis 3 days a week. The difference is I don't play with 30-year-olds like I used to, with 50, 60, and 70-year-olds, but I'm still playing. And yes, it hurts like crazy, but my doctor says, do it. It's so good for you. Even walking 5 minutes a day is exercise. And you've got to push yourself to get out of that couch and tell yourself that tomorrow is not the day I'm going to die.
Right.
And I always tell people that anxiety for tomorrow just ruins today. And I ruined so many todays for the first 3 months that I just refused to let that happen.
I think it's so important for patients and caregivers too to hear that, because you do get caught in this trap of paralysis a lot of times after you're first diagnosed. And I know it's funny. I remember within the first week after my diagnosis, my mom decided that she was going to push us all to get out of the house and go take a drive up to Mount Charleston. I was living in Vegas at the time. And believe it or not, Vegas has a ski resort in a mountain with snow.
I haven't been outside this trip, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I know most people haven't, but there is actually a ski resort in Vegas. And so my mom was like, let's take a drive. And are you kidding me, Mom? I'm dying. Like, no, I don't want to move. I don't want to get up. I'm super swollen and can barely walk. And I was like so annoyed whenever she forced us all to the car and caravanned up to the mountain. But I have pictures that day of us up on Mount Charleston and everything. And I look back and I go, I'm so glad that she convinced us to have that, because now I have these memories of that day. And it's hard sometimes to motivate yourself to do that. And I think whenever you are able to switch the mindset from I'm dying, this is it, I just want to drown in my sorrow, to I'm going to make the most of whatever time I have, that's a monumental shift for a lot of people, and sounds like for you as well.
And let me tell you again, a lesson I learned. So first, I'm trying to figure out how do you get rid of anxiety? And I was thinking about all these different things I could do to basically get it off the table. And I was extremely unsuccessful. And then I said, how do we bottle anxiety up? So I came up with something that I do share with lots of people, and it's in my book. I don't sleep a lot. So I'm up every morning at 1 a.m. So from 1 to 1:30 every single night, I do all the what ifs. Oh my God, what if my inconclusive scans show progression? Oh my God, what if I don't get to see my grandson turn 8? Oh my God, what? I wallow in self-pity. I literally set my Alexa 30 minutes. She turns off at 30 minutes. I stop it. I watch Dateline. Don't ask why. At 2 a.m, because that Dateline channel always has me. Then the next day, if I'm having a bad day or starting to feel like antsy, I go, no. I reboot my brain to say, I cannot be sad or wallow in self-pity or have anxiety until the next day at 1 a.m. So that way I know every single day I get that 30-minute period to do the things that people need to do. Yeah. And I refuse to let it affect me 23 and a half hours out of the day. And it works. It takes work, but it works.
Yeah, I think it's a great tip of yours. I love it. And also because I am a big Dateline fanatic myself.
We're sick people.
I always say I want either Keith Morrison or Josh Mankiewicz to do my story. And please no one ever say I light up a room, because that's an immediate way that I know I'm going to get axed. So
I love Keith Morrison. And whenever you hear voice, and I go to sleep to him. So when I wake up at 1 and I'm up for 2 or 3 hours, I put him on at 4 a.m. and I go to sleep. It's the most mean voice. We also realize that it's always him or her. And to realize how stupid people are. I learned how to commit the perfect murder, but I'm my wife, and I think she loves me, so I don't think it's going to happen.
True crime can be a stress reliever for some of us.
And the guy that doesn't go to his wife's funeral brings his girlfriend on a vacation 2 weeks later.
Right.
He's ultimately convicted of killing his wife. But I think this is called digressing, but this is also humor and smiling, and we have lives to live. It's not the form of carcinoma.
It's not all doctor's appointments
Yeah.
and doom and gloom. Joel, I just wanted to ask you because you've shared how you thrive with stage 4 kidney cancer now, which I love. I think that it's a great way to frame what this means for someone after a diagnosis. And can I just ask you, what's the one thing that you feel like you've really thrived doing since your diagnosis, and then one thing that you're looking forward to, whether it's the next year or dreaming about those long-term plans?
So just using the terms thriver and survivor, we set the bar way too low when we say we're survivors. We should aspire to thrive with this disease. And if we can achieve that, we're going to be pretty happy. So I do aspire to be a thriver, and many days I am, not every day. I created a bucket list after I got off the couch and started pushing my butt to do some things. And a friend of mine, every year we said, we'll go to a top 20 sporting event. So I've been to the Super Bowl in Southern California. I've been to the NCCA Final Football Championship. Last year we did the NCCA Basketball Championship. This year we're doing Wimbledon. Now, bucket list items can be expensive and travel, and they can be cheap and free and close by, but having a bucket list and ticking those boxes off, having 3 grandsons. When I first started, I had 1. So anything and everything to do with family, I took off on the bucket list. What I just added is I am going to Joliet, Illinois in October. I'm going to race a Lamborghini on a real track, hopefully taking 150, 160 miles. Or is that my bucket list item? It's so funny. Before I had this disease, I feared death. Now I don't fear it. It doesn't consume me. Everybody thinks I'm crazy, but that's fun. But going back to the basis of doing these things and having a thriving attitude, hope. You create a bucket list because it involves planning and putting things down that you hope to do, whether it's traveling 30 miles away to visit your aunt and uncle or going to London and Wimbledon. You've got to create that list. And if you're a caregiver, you've got to get that your patient loved one to create that list, because that gives us hope. 2 summers ago, I had to cancel everything because I had progression. I had trips scheduled, but I had to cancel everything. But this year, knock wood, everything is planned. I'm celebrating my 5th anniversary in September. Don and I already planned a celebratory trip. So for me, it's bucket list, and you don't create it because you're dying. You create it because you're alive.
Wow. Congratulations on 5 years, by the way.
Four and a half.
I'm going to congratulate you now. We're going to
Thank you,
speak
Laura.
this into existence. 5 was a big year for me and was very emotional. And so I'm glad that you have a great trip with Donna planned around it for you to both enjoy, because it's a big milestone.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And a lot of the numbers are based on 5 years.
Right.
Some argue once you make it past 5 years, some could argue, and some do argue, that you have more likelihood to make it much longer than that.
Right.
So it's a big, and we talked about your cancerversary. I say celebrate it because it's an important milestone. We achieved another year. We tamed the cancer beast for the last 12 months. So I do celebrate my cancerversary, and I think you do too, based on what you said.
Yeah, I do, because I'm acutely aware of how grateful I am for every year and what a gift it is. And I look at it as, again, a way to also celebrate the loved ones that we've lost along the way too. If the shoe were on the other foot and they were here and I wasn't, I'd want them to be celebrating and remembering me. And so I like to think that I'm doing the same whenever I celebrate mine.
And in 75 years, they will be doing that for you. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. Joel, I know that you do monthly open forums for JNF. Do you mind sharing a little bit for our audience, for those that aren't familiar with it?
Sure. I was asked by Linda Anderson at Judy Nicholson Foundation to help her moderate a forum of patients and caregivers. And I did the first few, and I had this script and everything. And then I realized we're not using the script. We're just going to go whatever direction the wind takes me. And we've now done it 3 years. I keep saying I'll stop doing it when people stop showing up. But we have a really nice combination of what I call the old guys and the newbies. And we just talk. I love having the new folks share their experiences and their fears and their questions. But we keep it to an hour purposely. And we usually end on the hour with people wanting more. But I think that's good. Then they sign up for next one. But you can sign up at the Judy Nicholson Foundation website. It seems to be a great outlet for a lot of people. And I love doing it as long as people get something out of it. And then speaking of Judy Nicholson Foundation, look at what you're doing. Look at all the great panels they've set up. Williamsburg, Virginia, there's a celebration of life. Now, a story about that one. I started that 4 years ago in Chicago with Sherry Mills. We said, I'm sick of commiserating about our disease together. Let's have a night where we just celebrate. And we did it in Chicago. My oncologist spoke. We had around 60 people there. Now we're going into our 4th year doing it. Judy Nicholson Foundation has taken it over. It is really just a fun event to celebrate being alive and also to honor those that have passed in the last year. And then there's a free one-day symposium the next day. So look, whoever's listening to this, please go on their site and look it up and consider being there. I get to MC it for the 4th year in a row. I don't know why, but they let me do it. But I will try to make a joke or two, usually at my expense, of course. But it's really just a fun event. And people smile and we take pictures and we have a doctor speak. We have patients share their stories. It's a great event in a beautiful area this year.
I know. Yeah, I'm really excited for this year. I know it's just, to your point, it's a wonderful way to truly celebrate. We've all been through a lot. And so I think we've earned the right to let down our hair and celebrate a bit.
I agree with you. And we should do it with our families. And whenever people are always reluctant to share good news in the community, I keep telling them, do you realize how important that is to everybody else out here? Share your no evidence of disease, share your stable for the 5th straight year, share your vacations or your honeymoons or your daughter's getting married or son's getting married, because that's life, that's living, that's thriving. So we all want to see that. People are reluctant to, they shouldn't be. We want to hear those good stories too.
You're right, Joel. I'm going to commit myself to doing more of that because I have a tendency not to, just because I struggle with survivor's guilt sometimes. I feel like I've had it easy compared to a lot of people, but it is important to share the good along with the stories that are a little bit tougher.
First of all, it's not easy. Secondly, you have stage 4 renal cell carcinoma. So when you share a story that you're doing well, nobody's thinking, oh, she has it easy or she's luckier than me. It says, maybe I can get there. Maybe I can achieve that. And we also know that everything can change. But I always tell people you can be driving 80 miles an hour on the interstate at night in the rain and it could all end right away. So don't do the what ifs, do the why not. Why not live a long time with this disease?
Joel, I don't know that we could have any other perfect ending than that. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up today?
Do you have any NCAA basketball tournament suggestions? Because I'll be doing that. No, I tell people to use the resources. The Kidney Cancer Association has a great website with materials. Judy Nicholson, small organization, but what it does is huge and everything's free. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of communities, and you can belong to as many communities. Find the ones that work for you. We're really proud of our stage 4 renal cell carcinoma community. There's no politics, no religion, nothing but care and love and compassion and information. And we're very proud of that. But there's other communities out there. There's a Cabomedics community that Mark Manning administers, which is absolutely incredible. The other thing is, if you don't know where to go, I'm easy to find. I'm easy to find on Facebook. I'm easy to find on cell phone. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. We are here to help each other. And I'm retired, so I have more time to help others than some people. But use us, right? We want to help you, and you're not alone. And that's the biggest thing I would tell somebody. We just had somebody join our community and said they were alone. I go, not anymore. You have us. And that's really important to know. So yeah, me as a lawyer, former lawyer, I could talk forever, but this has been a fun however many minutes we've been speaking.
No, this has been incredible, Joel. I could go all afternoon, but I know that you've been so generous with your time. And so thank you so much for joining the podcast today. I hope that I know that this will resonate with our listeners. And as Joel mentioned, you can find Judy Nicholson Kidney Cancer Foundation online. We'll drop the link at the end of the podcast as we always do. Special thanks to Merck for sponsoring this podcast. And thank you again to our wonderful guest, Joel Stern. Thank you for all that you do for the community. You do so much. You are being very humble in saying all the things that you do, because I know you really touch so many lives across the globe every year, Joel. So Thank you for sharing your story today, and take care. Hope you do well with your bracket. Enjoy driving in Joliet later this year.
Thank you, Laura. Let's do a celebration of life in Vegas next year. So
Yes, I would love that.
we will be. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Oh,
I
thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
I
Take care.
appreciate it. Take care.